That brings us up to the 8th grade time period.
Okay.
The beginning of the 8th grade, where were you?
So beginning of 8th grade, I think that we had moved back to Harrison Mill Road, Bethlehem area.
Okay. And were you and Marcy living together at that point?
No, she was still down in Jefferson, I believe.
Okay. In the beginning of the 8th grade, was Colt in Jefferson or was he in Fitzgerald?
So it was kind of a hybrid. Going back to not getting really what he wanted all the time from me, Debbie would buy him whatever he wanted almost immediately all the time. So he kind of had that connection with her where he felt like he could get a little more from her. On top of, I think he was missing Jenny and Coley a little bit. And so there was a time where he was up here in Bethlehem with me. Debbie would come up and, he had gone back to Fitzgerald for a time and then came back up to Bethlehem. So there was I don't remember the dates exactly of when that was, but I know he was back and forth.
Okay. In the beginning of the 8th grade, was he there or here, if you remember?
So originally what had happened, I'm trying to recall exact dates here, but I know there was conversation of like late 7th grade, 8th grade, that we started talking about online school. Debbie and I were involved in those conversations quite a bit. And then at some point, I want to say it was over the summer, late summer, he had gone back to Fitzgerald with Debbie, packed up all of his stuff, and Debbie had talked to Colt and said, "Hey, listen, we can do homeschooling down there." And Debbie was retired, and she would just kind of help him through homeschooling and kind of teach him. And actually, Jenny was a part of that conversation as well when they were down there in Fitzgerald. So I spent a time up here in Bethlehem by myself.
Okay. The Coley and Jenny, they never had a problem going to school.
No, they were
even when they were living up here with you. Was there a problem with them getting them registered, getting them in school, and them going to school?
No, they now. I want to be clear. This was a joint venture. Now, at this point, I've never been a single dad of 3 kids. I underestimated what it took. I can tell you that right now. It's a lot, and so I had help from Debbie with a lot of the registration. I had help from Debbie's other daughter, Annie, Marcy's little sister. She was engaged in helping me get everybody registered and in school. I was working full time, and so they were of great help. But we were able to get everybody registered. And Jenny and Coley, that is.
And did you believe during the 8th grade that Colt was actually doing an online program? Right.
So this is where it gets kind of a little complicated for me. Even look back on all of that, and so Coley and Jenny were good to go. Colt and I had a conversation after Fitzgerald and homeschooling with Debbie. This is what I want everybody to understand. There's a combination of things here. It was not, for me, it was tough on him. The bullying kind of affected him in 7th and 8th grade, and what's not brought up in this court or any kind of conversation, I find out later that, even the bus ride home for him, kids throwing shampoo bottles at him and milk cartons, and it was very difficult for him through 7th grade. So that's where I initially thought, okay, if he's going to homeschool down there, great. I really wanted to get him involved in middle school with Jenny. And but we started down the conversation of online school here in Bethlehem. So he was open to that idea. I had talked to Jenny. I'm like, listen, I'm offering this to your brother. Would you like to do it? She ultimately chose to go to school. It was at that time I was working with Debbie on, like, let's just do it. You know, it was simple down in Ben Hill. But as it went along and I found out it wasn't as simple as getting online and signing them up. It was very more difficult than I anticipated. Everything was full. We were getting on into the school year. There were not a lot of options that were open and readily available for him.
Did your sister help you find an option?
Right. So as time went along, we're pushing through 8th grade, and he's falling further behind, and I realized that. And I had reached out to my sister Lorene, a retired school teacher, and explained to her the dynamic here, and that I wanted him to be online in school, and what had happened, and it was harder than I anticipated of finding him an open spot. And she said, hey, I know you got a lot on your plate. Let me start trying to track down some places where we could send him. So I'd had that conversation with her, and I think it was Georgia Virtual is where there were 3 schools she said that she had narrowed it down to. Georgia Virtual is what jumps out in my mind, that she requested all the stuff that she needed from me, birth certificates and whatnot, to get all of their stuff completed online, which I gave her all that information. And there was passwords or access codes created through that system in the email chain or talking back and forth with Lorene. So I had thought in a time period there that he was locked in and doing what he needed to do. I explained to Colt, hey, we've got you registered. I had thought at the time at Georgia Virtual, as it turns out, maybe it was something that I missed. I thought that, I guess I had thought maybe Lorene, once I heard passwords and showed Colt what he needed to do, I thought it was as simple as him going in there and doing what he needed to do.
Was there times when you would check and ask him?
So I had asked him, I can't give you exact dates here, but I did calling him from work and asking him, are you online doing what you're supposed to be doing? I remember him having a conversation with me about an algebra class, and when I got home from work, he was showing me a page of what he was working on. So I never, verified. That's my bad. I didn't fact check what he was saying. We had established a trust between him and I, and a respect for one another, that he was growing up, and I was trying. That's what the whole idea was try to get him to just be upfront and honest with me, and moving forward to high school in the back of my mind is what I was thinking. But also, as this time frame was moving along, we were getting further and further behind, and I knew that, and I got to a point in 8th grade where it's like, man, I don't know if he can catch up, right? So I had a conversation with Colt originally and said, listen, Colt and I were at dinner one night, and I said, what would you think about taking the 8th grade over again? And I had a two-prong attack there on that. I didn't think that he was far enough ahead in 8th grade, and I didn't want him to come out of the gates behind in high school. We're already kind of bumpy in school with him, and I thought if he could retake the 8th grade, that would put Jenny in the same grade as as Colt, and they were close. They had a great relationship. Would they be in the same classes? Maybe, I don't know, but they would be in the same school with the ultimate goal that they could kind of confide in one another, get through school together. And a bigger piece was if they went through 8th grade together, they would go into high school together, and they would make that 4-year journey together through high school. That was my train of thought, right? It was never that I don't give a damn if he goes to 8th grade. That's not what happened here. It was very, very fluid kind of thing, trying to make sure I was, and listen, could I have done better? Yes, I could have done better. I could have done more. I see that now. But the overall goal here was to just get him in a comfort zone place. And it got to that point where I thought, okay, well, I had to retake a grade. This would be great. If he could just go take the 8th grade again with Jenny, they could help each other and they could move through high school together. So that was the thought process.
All right. Now, was there a time that Colt went down to Fitzgerald to stay with his mother where he got into an altercation with her?
Yes. So that would be that summer time frame. I don't have the dates here in front of me. I just know that Debbie, and this was the time frame when Debbie came up and they took his computer, packed up a bunch of his stuff, and he went down there to stay. He was kind of missing Jenny and wanting to hang out with Mamu. And so Mamu had called me. There was actually 2 that I know of. This is the only 2 that I was ever made aware of. The first one was Debbie had called me and said that Marcy had slapped Colt across the face really hard. They were arguing. I don't know what about it, was not there. She just said it was an ugly argument. And I never hit my kids. There's multiple reasons for that. So Debbie said that DFAX was called. I didn't know if she had called or who had called. Ultimately, I find out that it was Annie that had called DFAX in the first episode of the slap, right? So I had talked to Colt and said, listen, you okay? What happened? He said, we just had a knockdown, drag out kind of argument. Mama was drinking and just, she just slapped me. And I said, and Mamu was there. She was standing right there. I was like, okay, that was the first episode. The second one, I don't think.
Did he ever tell you in that first episode that he broke a window on a door?
He hadn't broken the window or done the damage that we've heard about in court here yet. I believe my time frame was all of that happened after the second episode with Marcy, and it was of all things over chicken nuggets. And what Debbie had called me again and said that she didn't get Colt the right order from McDonald's. And I guess Colt smart alecked her about, you didn't get me the right stuff or whatever. And Debbie said, and Marcy lost it. Her words were, she attacked Colt, and she said, just started hitting on Colt a lot, hitting him wherever she could hit him. And that I had talked to Colt about that. He said she hit me in the face, she hit me in the, and I said, over chicken nuggets. He's like, Dad, I could smell alcohol on her. She's screaming, just out of control kind of stuff. And I said, okay, do you want me to come get you? And she was like, no, I'm going to go. He said, I'm going to stay with Mamu, which when the kids and everybody went down there, they weren't, I know we heard that they were living with her. Now, little Coley did stay with her, but Jenny and Colt, when they went to Fitzgerald, they stayed with Debbie, in their house. So that was their place. So I asked him, do you want me to come get you? He said, no, I'm just going to go back to Mamou's and just stay away from her. So it was after that time frame where my understanding was he was breaking the windows. I didn't know about the couch thing until after I went down there to pick him up, and I received a call one day at work from him, middle of the day, and he was in tears, and I'm like, what is wrong? He said he had another falling out with his mother. He said, I slammed the door and broke the window, and it escalated from there. He didn't tell me about him cutting up the couch, or, it's kind of unclear who really did that. One says the other. I wasn't down there. He said, I just need you to come get me right now. And I said, well, where are you? He said, out behind the house, just kind of staying on this little dirt road. And I said, well, it's going to be 4.5 hours before I can get there, but I'll come get you. He said, Papa Charlie, which is Debbie's husband, he said, Papa Charlie called the police on me. And I said, for what? And he said, because when I broke the window, they said I cut the couch up. And I said, did you cut the couch up? He said, I tore part of the top of the couch off. He said, but they're saying I sliced it all up and broke these windows. He said, I slammed the door and broke one window above the doorknob. He said, and Papa Charlie showed up with Ben Hill County Police and wanted to take me to jail, basically. He said, and the police officer was telling Colt that he couldn't act like this and disrespect his mama, grandparents, and if he couldn't get it calmed down, that he would ultimately take him to YDC or whatever. And Colt was upset about that and asked me, hey, I need you to just come down here and get me and bring me back home, which I did.
Did you do that?
I did.
Did you go down that same day?
That same day, yeah.
And do you remember about what month that was?
I don't remember exactly what month that was. I don't.
Okay. Shortly thereafter, did you find that Marcy had been put into rehab? I
did. So the rehab came after I'd picked Colt back up, and we were kind of resuming what I was just talking about, trying to get him.
Now the other two children were not with you at that point.
Still down there.
It was just you and
right.
Colt. Okay.
And Jenny was living with Debbie. She had taken over her mom's old room and whatnot, and that's where she resided every day, every night. Coley was in and out. He just kind of go with the flow kind of kid, and little Coley and Marcy were together a lot. Colt and I were back up here, and that's when I received a call. I think when I was talking to Investigator Smith, I said 2 a.m. I got the phone call. I actually, thinking back on that, I think it was 10-ish because I knew 4 hours it would take me I wouldn't be there till 2 in the morning. So got a call from the DFACS case manager and said, I need you to come down here and pick up your children. Wouldn't get into why. Just said that they were in danger. I explained to her where I lived, how long it would take me to get there. She stated, well, can you just be down here at 7:30 the next morning? We'll meet at a church down the road from their house, and we'll all go over there together. I asked her, I needed to know what this was about. She said, I can't until we go over some paperwork, logistics stuff, and then I'll explain it to everybody all at once. I still did not know. In my mind, I thought as much drinking that she had been doing, I was like, oh, she'd had DUIs before. I'm like, oh, she got a DUI, probably had Coley in the car. That was my original thought. So drove down there the next morning, Colt and I did, talked about what we thought this might be, and met the DFACS lady, went to Debbie's house. That's where she was with the kids. Knocked on the door, went in, we all sat down. The kids were in bedrooms, so they weren't a part of the conversation. actually find out later that Colt and Jenny had cracked the bedroom door and were listening to the whole conversation. And she said, listen, she said there had been a call made to DFACS, and I find out later that it was Annie, the little sister that had called DFACS, made a complaint that she was driving drunk or acting recklessly with little Coley in the car, something along the lines of to where they needed to hair follicle test her. And so she's reading off the timeline of when they did the hair follicle test. I didn't even know that took place. Apparently it took place a week or so, maybe two, before I got the call from DFACS that night. And she went through the whole process of we hair follicle tested you, and here are the results.
Okay.
So,
and at that point, you took the other two children with you?
correct. She stated that I was to take all the children back, that Marcy could have visitation as long as it was supervised. And at that point, I asked by who. I wasn't sure if it was DFACS. She said, no, you will be the one supervising, and you are the one that says when she can come and when she can't come. She cannot just show up. This has to be agreed upon time and whatnot, so I took the kids back.
Were you prepared to have three children
No.
at that point?
No, I said this in passing to so many people. I hear people talk about single moms and whatnot and all the things they go through. And as a dad, I was fortunate enough just to get up and go to work. And, you think as what I'm doing, like that's the hardest thing in the world is get up and go to work, as much as I was working. It paled in comparison to what a single parent has to go through with one kid, let alone three. So I underestimated the effort and everything that it took to just keep everything afloat with three kids, let alone all the ins and outs and things that happen with kids every single day. It was a lot more than I could ever imagine that it being, and I underestimated that greatly.
Now, was there a time when Marcy called you and threatened to kill you and Colt?
So, yeah. So that day, I originally got a call from Annie, the little sister, and I believe I was cooking breakfast or dinner. And because I know I was cooking something, because I have a phone laying on the counter, I just hit speaker. I'm like, hey, and she's crying. I'm like, oh, what's wrong? You okay? Her original statement was, we can't find my mama. I'm like, what do you mean you can't find your mama? They're in Virginia. Like, they're all up there. Charlie's in some golf tournament. She's like, no, she came back early. I'm like, well, then she's at the house. She's like, no. She's like, we can't find her. I'm like, well, how long have you been looking? She's like, since yesterday. And I was like, oh, shit. I'm like, okay, have you called the police or anything? Like, is something wrong? I'm like, in my mind, I'm thinking, God, I hope nothing happened to her medically, like heart attack or something. She's like, I've got the neighbor going over to beat on the door. Mary Beth is their neighbor, whatever they grew up with. And if she doesn't answer, she's just going to go in the house. And I'm like, well, call me back. Let me know if they find her, So Colt was like, what do you mean they can't, find her? I was like, I don't know, buddy. I said, you just heard everything I heard.
Now, were the other two children with you at this point?
Yes, they were with me.
Okay.
So she calls back sometime later, I don't know exactly the time frame, and says, Mary Beth is in the house, and they found my mom. They found Mamu. I'm like, okay, great. Is she okay? She's like, no. I'm like, okay, well, what do you mean no? Is she in the hospital? What's going on? She said, no. She said Marcy had taped her to the chair in their office. And then not only taped her to the chair, left her there for a couple of days. They found her with soiled pants, and she just basically had to go to the restroom, whatever, just taped to the chair. And that she had taken one of the dog leashes out of the backyard and tied the chair to the sleeper sofa behind her so she couldn't scoot to the phone to call 911.
I'm going to object to the litany of things that he wasn't even there to know about.
Do you have a response, Mr. Perry?
I'll try to redirect, Judge.
I'll sustain the objection.
Thank you.
Sure.
But was there a time when you found out that Marcy threatened to kill you and
Sure.
Colt?
After what I was just trying to say right there, she went through what condition she found her mother, and she said that she had told her mother that she was coming up here, wanted her car and money or credit card, and her mother asked her why, and she said, "I'm going up to Winder to kill Coley." And I'm like, to kill me? And Marcy said, yes, she's coming up there to kill you. And she said, she told Mama, meaning Debbie, and since Colt is your favorite, I'm going to kill him too, and you live with that. So that on that day is the first time I had heard that threat.
And did Colt know that?
He heard it on speakerphone while we were talking.
Okay. Now, Debbie went to jail for a few months. Was there any contact that you had with Debbie during that time?
Marcy?
Not Debbie, I'm sorry. Marcy. Marcy
yeah.
had gone to jail. Was there any contact that you had with her when she was in custody?
Right. So originally, I did not. And as time went along, Debbie had come up to talk, and hang out with us in Bethlehem, and explained to me what she had went through and what condition Marcy was in and how she was acting, and just felt like whatever she was taking, it just wasn't Marcy. She just had lost her mind. That was her statement, I believe.
Did you want to try to bring the family back together?
Yeah, so
even though she had gone to jail?
Yeah, so during that time period, Debbie and I had talked about, her being in jail, and Debbie felt like, felt bad that all that had happened, and that, maybe somewhere along the line she could have seen Marcy, acting and doing the things she was doing while she was down there. I wouldn't say felt bad for her being in jail, but just kind of a little down because her daughter was locked up. My kids were obviously upset. Colt and Jenny had talked about it. I'm not really sure how little Coley got brought into that conversation, but generally known in our house that she was in jail. I tried to keep the super negative stuff away from little Coley, just because he's obviously too young to understand. And I thought, man, I just hate that all this happened for her. And the kids were like, well, we're going to lose our mom kind of thing. And at some point, I just was like, I don't want my kids to think that I'm just going to walk away from their mom. She's the mother of my children. And I didn't condone, obviously, what she did or anything like that, but I thought I could use the time and Marcy reached out, I think, through the jail kind of connection thing, and I think she called me the first time and had apologized for everything, said, she was, I think her comment was, I took a whole bunch of painkillers and I was high on meth, and I just was not myself, and I would never do the things I told my mom I was going to do, just